In the bustling halls of Denver General Hospital, Jenna Sparks moved with a practiced grace, her nurses' scrubs a familiar second skin. The overhead lights cast a sterile glow that matched the clinical environment, but Jenna's heart felt heavy, burdened by an inexplicable void that lingered within her. Today, she was assigned to care for Mr. Thompson, an elderly man with a weathered face that spoke of countless stories, etched with laughter and sorrow alike. As she adjusted the IV drip beside his bed, Mr. Thompson's eyes twinkled with mischief. "You know, dear, family is what keeps us going. Without them, we just drift like leaves in the wind," he remarked, his voice gravely yet warm. Jenna paused, her hands stilling for a moment as his words pierced through the fog of her thoughts. "Family?" she echoed softly, a shadow crossing her features. "I guess I've never really had that kind of connection." An unfamiliar ache settled in her chest as she contemplated her own life. Despite her nurturing profession, Jenna often felt isolated, like a spectator in her own existence. Mr. Thompson observed her closely, lifting a frail hand to pat her arm gently. "You'd be surprised how many people are out there, just waiting to be found. Sometimes we just need to look a little harder." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Jenna nodded, forcing a smile, but inside, she felt the familiar pang of longing. After her shift, Jenna returned home to her modest apartment, where the silence echoed around her like a ghost. She dropped her keys on the kitchen counter and wandered into the living room, where childhood photographs adorned the walls. Each picture was a bittersweet reminder of moments that felt incomplete, memories tinged with an unsettling emptiness. As she sifted through a box of old keepsakes, her fingertips brushed against a faded photograph. She pulled it out, her heart racing. It was a family portrait, but one corner was torn, obscuring a face. Jenna's breath caught in her throat. Who could it be? She whispered to herself, feeling a profound sense of loss wash over her. Why can't I remember? Sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, she scrutinized the image. Her parents smiled back at her, their faces radiant with joy, but the absence of the missing face felt palpable. "I need to know," she murmured, her resolve hardening. A sense of urgency ignited within her, as if the answer to her emptiness lay just beyond her reach. Later that evening, Jenna turned on the television, seeking distraction. She stumbled upon a documentary about twins separated at birth, and as the stories unfolded, she felt her heart race. The screen showed siblings meeting for the first time, their reactions raw and powerful, a connection that transcended time and space. Tears welled in her eyes as she watched. It was as if she were witnessing a glimpse of her own life, a narrative, yet unwritten. Suddenly, her laptop chimed with an incoming email notification, jolting her from her reverie. Jenna wiped her eyes and opened her laptop, her heart thumping wildly as she clicked on the message. The subject line read, "You have a brother." Her breath hitched and the world around her faded into a blur. "Could it be?" she whispered, staring at the screen, her mind racing with possibilities. The email detailed a man named Caleb Morris who claimed to be her twin brother, separated from her at birth. The words swirled in her mind, a whirlwind of confusion and intrigue. "I've been searching for you," it said, "and I need to talk." Jenna leaned back in her chair, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She felt a rush of emotions, excitement, fear, and a flicker of hope that had long been dormant. Perhaps this was the key to filling the emptiness she had carried for so long. As rain pattered softly against the window, as Jenna Sparks prepared to leave for work, the morning ritual felt mundane, but today an unusual restlessness gnawed at her. She grabbed her bag and glanced at the mirror, catching a fleeting glimpse of uncertainty in her reflection. With a deep breath, she stepped outside, the cool air wrapping around her like a thin blanket. Just as she was about to lock her door, her phone buzzed in her pocket. An unknown number flashed on the screen. Jenna hesitated, staring at the phone as it rang for a second time. With a dismissive shake of her head, she silenced the call and stepped out into the world. The streets were slick, reflecting the soft glow of streetlights. As she hurried toward her car, she felt the weight of something inexplicable in the pit of her stomach. Before she could overthink it, she opened her car door and slid into the driver's seat. But just as she was about to start the engine, a figure appeared in her peripheral vision. Jenna turned her head abruptly, her heart racing as she laid eyes on a man standing hesitantly on her porch. "Caleb?" she whispered, disbelief washing over her. The man looked equally uncertain, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his jacket. He was taller than her, with dark hair that fell slightly over his forehead. His eyes, a striking shade of blue, mirrored a hint of familiarity that both comforted and unnerved her. Hi, I'm Caleb Morris," he stammered, his voice breaking slightly. I'm your brother, your twin brother." Jenna's breath caught in her throat. The world around her faded into a blur as she tried to process his words. "What? No, that can't be. You must be mistaken," she managed to say, although a part of her whispered that this was no coincidence. Caleb took a hesitant step closer, his expression earnest and vulnerable. "I know this sounds crazy, but I found out that I was adopted, and I've been searching for you. I need you to believe me." "Why would I believe you?" Jenna shot back, crossing her arms defensively. "I've never heard of you. How do I know this isn't some kind of sick joke?" "I have pictures," he replied quickly, pulling out a worn envelope from his jacket. He opened it, revealing a collection of faded photographs, some of which showed two small children, one with dark hair and vibrant blue eyes, the other with similarly striking features but a different hue. "Look, this is us, you and me, back when we were kids." Jenna's heart raced as she gingerly took the photos from him. Each image felt like a punch to her gut. She could see the innocence in their smiles, a mirror of her own childhood memories. "How did you find me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper as she studied the pictures. "I hired a private investigator," Caleb answered, his voice steadying. "It took time, but I found you. I'm willing to do a DNA test if you want proof. I need to know you." Jenna felt a whirlwind of emotions crash over her, anger, confusion, and an inexplicable sense of loss. She could hardly process it all. "You expect me to just believe you and jump into this? I don't even know you." "I get it," Caleb responded, his tone sincere. "But I've felt this emptiness for so long, and when I learned about you, it was like a piece of me was finally found. I can't explain it, but I feel connected to you already." She looked into his eyes, searching for any hint of deception, yet all she found was raw vulnerability. "What if this is all a mistake?" she countered, her voice trembling slightly. "Then we'll figure that out together," Caleb replied softly, his gaze unwavering. "But I have to try. I can't walk away without knowing." Jenna took a deep breath, weighing her options. The prospect of having a brother was both terrifying and exhilarating. "Okay," she finally said, her voice steadier. "Let's do the DNA test." Relief washed over Caleb's face, but Jenna could still see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "Thank you," he murmured. "You won't regret it." As they sat together in the cafe, the atmosphere was thick with an unspoken tension. Jenna sipped her coffee, trying to mask the storm of feelings inside her. She glanced at Caleb, who was poring over the photographs again, a pensive look on his face. "Do you ever wonder what our lives would have been like if things had been different?" he asked suddenly, breaking the silence. "All the time," Jenna replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've always felt like there was something missing, but I never knew what it was." "I felt that too," Caleb confessed, his voice tinged with sadness. "I always knew I was different, like I was meant for something more." "Maybe we were meant to find each other," Jenna suggested, her heart fluttering at the thought. I need time to process all of this." "Take all the time you need," Caleb replied, nodding. "I'm here for you, no matter what." They spent the next hour sharing their stories, their laughter mixing with the bittersweet realization of lost time. Jenna felt the walls she had built around herself begin to crack, and for the first time, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, she had found the missing piece in her life. Jenna sat across from Caleb in the small, cozy cafe, the scent of roasted coffee beans swirling around them, mingling with the warmth of the atmosphere. Sunlight filtered through the windows, casting soft shadows on the wooden tables. She stirred her coffee absent-mindedly, her mind racing with questions and emotions. Caleb, on the other hand, seemed to radiate a nervous energy, his fingers tapping against the table in an anxious rhythm. "So, you really are my brother." Jenna finally broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. Caleb nodded, his eyes searching hers for a trace of belief. "I know it sounds crazy, Trust me, I felt the same way when I first found out. But I have proof. I wouldn't just show up here if I wasn't certain. Jenna's heart raced at the thought. I don't understand how this is possible. I grew up thinking I was an only child. My entire life, I've felt this emptiness. And now you're telling me there's a part of me I never knew? I felt the same way, Caleb replied, leaning forward, his voice earnest. Growing up, I always sensed that something was missing. I spent years searching for answers, for family. When I found out about you, it was like everything clicked into place. Jenna's gaze dropped to her coffee cup, swirling the dark liquid. What did you find out? How did you discover me? Caleb took a deep breath, collecting his thoughts. After my last relationship fell apart, I felt lost. I started looking into my adoption, trying to understand more about my past. I found documents that led me to the agency, and they confirmed that I had a twin sister. That's when I knew I had to find you. Jenna felt a mix of emotions, curiosity, excitement, and an undercurrent of fear. What if I don't want to be found? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Caleb's expression softened. You don't have to decide that right now. I just want you to know I'm here. I want to get to know you, to understand who you are. You're not alone anymore. As they continued to converse, Jenna felt the barriers she'd built around herself slowly begin to crumble. Caleb's openness was disarming, and she found herself sharing pieces of her life. I work as a nurse. I love helping people, but sometimes it feels like there's a wall between me and everyone else, she admitted, her vulnerability shining through. Caleb nodded, his eyes reflecting understanding. I get it. I've always struggled to connect with people too. I think it's because of our pasts. We've both been searching for something that feels right, something that feels like home. Jenna looked up, meeting his gaze. Do you think we can ever really know each other? I mean, after all these years apart? I believe we can, he replied firmly. It may take time, but I'm willing to put in the effort. We both deserve a chance to know each other. A silence enveloped them, thick with unspoken words. Jenna felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. Maybe this was the connection she had longed for. What if our parents knew about this? What if they wanted to keep us apart? Caleb shrugged, his expression contemplative. That's a possibility we can't ignore. But I think it's important to focus on us right now. We can't change the past, but we can shape our future. I want to be part of your life, Jenna, no matter what. Jenna bit her lip, grappling with the weight of his words. She had never considered the possibility of having someone who understood her so profoundly, someone who had shared the same beginnings. It's just overwhelming, she admitted, her voice cracking slightly. I know, but we can take it one step at a time, Caleb assured her. How about we start with dinner tomorrow? Just the two of us. We can talk more, and maybe even share some laughs. Dinner sounds nice, she replied, a small smile breaking through her uncertainty. I'd like that. As they finished their drinks, Jenna felt an unfamiliar warmth growing inside her, a sense of belonging, a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something beautiful. Jenna sat quietly in the dimly lit room of Caleb's adoptive parents' home, her heart racing as she sifted through the knickknacks and family photos that adorned the mantelpiece. The air felt thick with unspoken truths, and a sense of foreboding hung over her like a storm cloud. Beside her, Caleb chatted amiably with his adoptive mother, but Jenna was lost in her thoughts, her mind racing with the implications of Caleb's existence in her life. As the conversation wound down, Jenna's gaze fell on a small drawer, partially open at the bottom of a side table. She felt a pull toward it, driven by an inexplicable urge to uncover what lay hidden. Excuse me for a moment, she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Caleb nodded, sensing her need for space. As she approached the drawer, she felt a mix of curiosity and trepidation. With trembling fingers, she pulled it open, revealing a collection of letters and old photographs. One letter caught her eye, its edges yellowed and frayed. It was addressed to Caleb's parents, written in a hurried scrawl. Jenna's heart raced as she carefully unfolded it, her eyes scanning the words. The letter revealed secrets she had never anticipated. Dear Tom and Mary, it began. I hope this letter finds you well. I am writing to explain the decision we made regarding the twins, Jenna and Caleb. The words tumbled out, each one heavy with emotion. The letter spoke of a traumatic event that had led to the separation of the twins, a tragic accident that left their families shattered and terrified for Caleb and Jenna's safety. "We believed it was for the best," the letter continued, "but I have carried this guilt for years." Jenna's breath caught in her throat as she read. The implications of the letter struck her like a physical blow. The realization that her life had been built on a lie, that the very foundation of her existence was entwined with this past, overwhelmed her. She felt her knees weaken, and she sank onto the nearby couch, the letter still clutched tightly in her hands. Caleb, noticing her distress, approached her with concern etched across his face. "Jenna, what's wrong?" She looked up, tears brimming in her eyes. "Caleb, you need to read this," she said, her voice cracking as she handed him the letter. He took it, his brow furrowing as he scanned the contents. The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of their newfound reality. "I can't believe this," Caleb finally said, his voice low and shaky. "All this time, we were separated to protect us? Why didn't anyone tell us?" Jenna asked, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "Why keep this from us? I feel like my whole life has been a lie." Caleb sat down beside her, the letter still in his hands. "I don't know," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "But we need to confront them. We deserve answers." Jenna nodded, a mix of determination and fear coursing through her veins. "I need to understand why they thought this was the right decision. I need to look them in the eye." Caleb took a deep breath, his own emotions swirling. "I'm scared, Jenna. What if it turns out? What if they didn't care about us at all?" Jenna's heart ached at his words. "They made a choice, Caleb, a choice that changed everything. We have to know why." With newfound resolve, they decided to confront Caleb's adoptive parents. Jenna could feel the tension building as they approached the living room where Tom and Mary were seated. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken words, and Jenna felt her stomach churn as she prepared to confront the truth. "Can we talk?" Jenna asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. Tom and Mary exchanged wary glances before nodding. "Of course," Tom replied, his demeanor shifting to one of concern. Jenna took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. "We found a letter. It talks about why you separated us," she said, her voice unwavering. "We deserve to know the truth." Mary's face paled, and she glanced at Tom, who sighed heavily. "We hoped you would never have to find out like this," he said, his voice low. "Why did you keep it from us?" Jenna pressed, her emotions boiling over. "We've lived in the dark for so long." Mary wiped a tear from her cheek. "We thought it was for your protection. We were terrified. We thought we were doing the right thing." As the weight of their words settled over Jenna and Caleb, Jenna felt an overwhelming mix of anger and sorrow. She had spent her life searching for connection, only to discover that her very existence was entwined in a web of fear and secrecy. How could they have believed that this was the right choice? "Do you understand the pain you caused?" Caleb asked, his voice rising. "Do you understand what it felt like growing up not knowing my twin?" The room fell silent, the air thick with tension. As the conversation unfolded, Jenna realized that the answers they sought would not be easy. But for the first time, she felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps understanding would lead to healing, and she and Caleb could finally begin to piece together the fragments of their shared past. Caleb stood outside Jenna's apartment, his heart racing as he replayed their last conversation in his mind. He knew he needed to reach her, to bridge the distance that had grown between them since the revelation of the letter. Taking a deep breath, he knocked firmly but gently on her door, hoping she would let him in. After a moment of hesitation, he heard the soft sound of the lock turning. Jenna opened the door, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy from crying. The sight of her fragile state struck Caleb like a physical blow. "Jenna," he said softly, taking a step inside. "Can we talk?" "I don't know, Caleb," she replied, her voice wavering. "I'm still trying to process everything." Jenna turned away, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I feel so lost." "I understand," he said, his voice low and steady. He closed the door behind him and stepped closer, his heart aching for her. "But you don't have to do this alone. We're in this together." She looked at him, her expression a mix of anger and anguish. "You don't get it. I thought I had a family, a place where I belonged. And now I find out it was all a lie." What else don't I know? Caleb took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. I'm just as lost as you are. I thought I was the only one grappling with this. When I found out about you, I felt a glimmer of hope, but now, it seems like everything is unraveling. Jenna crossed her arms defensively, and now her gaze fixed on the floor. How can I trust you? You showed up out of nowhere, claiming to be my brother. And now, I find out our lives were torn apart by decisions made without us. What if you knew more about it than you're letting on? Jenna, I promise you, I didn't know, Caleb pleaded, stepping closer. All I've ever wanted is to find my family. I'm not your enemy. I need you to believe that. Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken fears. Finally, Jenna's voice broke the tension. I just feel so betrayed. By my biological parents, by the life I thought I had, and now, even by you. I'm not betraying you, Caleb insisted, his eyes searching hers for understanding. I'm here to help you. We can face this together. We need to face it together. Jenna looked away, her emotions swirling inside her. I don't know if I can do that, Caleb. This pain, it feels insurmountable right now. I'm scared. Caleb reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. I'm scared too, but we can't let fear control us. We have to confront the truth, no matter how painful it is. It's the only way we'll find peace. She met his gaze, and for a moment, it felt as if the world outside faded away. What if the truth is worse than we think? Jenna whispered, her voice trembling. Then we'll face it, he replied, his voice firm. Together, because we owe it to ourselves and to our past to find out what happened. We can't let it keep us apart. Jenna sighed heavily, her defenses slowly crumbling. I don't know, Caleb. I just don't know if I have it in me. You do, he said, his voice softening. You're stronger than you think. Just allow yourself to feel, to grieve. It's okay to be angry. I'm here for you. With a shaky breath, Jenna finally nodded, her resolve beginning to strengthen. Okay, I'll try, but I need you to promise me something. No more secrets. If we're going to do this, we need to be completely honest with each other. Caleb smiled, relief washing over him. I promise. No more secrets. We'll face everything together. As Jenna took a step closer, their eyes locked, a sense of understanding began to blossom between them. The road ahead would be difficult, but they would walk it side by side, unearthing the buried truths of their past and forging a new bond that could withstand the weight of their shared history. I'm still scared, Jenna admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Me too, Caleb replied, but we'll figure it out. Together. In that moment, they found a flicker of hope amidst the pain, a glimmer of light that promised healing and redemption, no matter how long the journey might be. In the golden glow of the late afternoon sun, Jenna and Caleb strolled through the park, the vibrant colors of autumn leaves painting the landscape around them. The air was crisp, filled with the earthy scent of fallen leaves and the distant laughter of children. As they walked side by side, Jenna felt an unfamiliar lightness in her chest, a warmth that had been absent for far too long. Can you believe how beautiful it is today? Caleb remarked, glancing at Jenna with a smile that lit up his face. There was a newfound ease in their relationship, a deep connection that transcended the initial shock of their reunion. Yeah, it really is, Jenna replied, her voice soft. She paused to take in the view, the park's pond glimmering like liquid gold. It feels like everything is falling into place, doesn't it? Caleb nodded, his expression turning serious. I've been thinking a lot about our future. Ever since we found each other, it feels like I have this purpose that I didn't have before. He took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. I want to do something meaningful, something that can help others. Jenna turned to face him, curiosity sparking in her eyes. What do you mean? I've always wanted to open a community workshop, Caleb explained, his passion evident in his tone. A place where young people can learn skills, get mentorship, and feel like they belong. I know how it feels to be lost, and I want to help others find their way. That's a beautiful dream, Caleb, Jenna said, her heart swelling with pride for the brother she was just getting to know. You would be amazing at that. He smiled, a hint of vulnerability creeping into his eyes. But I can't do it alone. I need support, and I want you to be part of it. Jenna felt a rush of warmth at his words, a sense of belonging that she had craved for years. I'd love to help you with that. I've always believed that healthcare isn't just about treating wounds or illnesses. It's about community and connection. I could use my nursing skills to offer health workshops or support groups. We could make a real difference together. Caleb's eyes lit up, and he took a step closer to her, his enthusiasm palpable. Exactly. We could create something that empowers people. Imagine how many lives we could touch. Jenna felt a surge of excitement as they shared this vision. It was as if the pieces of their lives were aligning, the emptiness she had felt for so long beginning to fill with purpose and hope. "Let's make a plan," she suggested, her voice gaining strength. "We could start small, maybe a few workshops at first and see where it goes." "I love that idea," Caleb said, his smile widening. "We'll brainstorm some topics and figure out the logistics. This is going to be incredible." As they continued to walk, Jenna felt a sense of clarity wash over her. "You know, I've spent so long feeling disconnected from everything, like I was just going through the motions. But now it feels like I finally have a reason to wake up every day." Caleb nodded, his expression softening. "I understand. I felt the same way for a long time. Meeting you has changed everything for me. It's like finding a missing piece of myself." Jenna looked at him, her heart full. "I never thought I would find that missing piece in my life, especially not in a brother I never knew I had. But here you are." Caleb chuckled lightly, his eyes sparkling with joy. "It's kind of crazy, isn't it? But I think it was meant to be. We're supposed to help each other heal." As they reached a small clearing in the park, Jenna turned to Caleb, a look of determination on her face. "Let's not waste any more time. Let's start planning today. I want to make this dream of ours a reality." Caleb grinned, the excitement palpable between them. "Yes, let's do it. We'll meet up later this week and start laying the groundwork." They stood there for a moment, the world around them fading away as they embraced the possibilities that lay ahead. It was a moment of clarity, purpose, and unwavering support, a promise to each other that they would not only face the future together, but also create a legacy that honored their shared bond. With hearts intertwined and dreams aligned, they walked back through the park, ready to embrace whatever came next. The day of the grand opening of Caleb's community workshop dawned bright and hopeful, despite the early morning chill that lingered in the air. Jenna arrived at the workshop, her heart fluttering with a mix of excitement and anxiety. She had spent the night before helping Caleb set up the last-minute details, but as the moment approached, the weight of what this day represented began to settle heavily on her shoulders. Caleb was busy arranging tools and materials on a long table that had been set up for the event. He looked up, meeting Jenna's gaze, and she could see the flicker of nerves in his eyes. "What if no one shows up?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Caleb," Jenna replied, stepping closer, "you've got to believe that people will come. This is important. You're offering something real to the community. Just look at all we've done here." She motioned to the brightly painted workshop, the tools neatly organized, and the banners that read, "Welcome to the future." He chuckled nervously, running a hand through his hair. "Yeah, but what if it's just us and a few stray cats?" Jenna laughed, shaking her head. "Then we'll be the best audience they've ever had. But seriously, you're not alone in this. I'm here, and I believe in you." She placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "This is a huge step, not just for you, but for both of us." Caleb nodded, visibly trying to absorb her encouragement. "Thanks, Jenna. I've never done anything like this before. What if I mess it up?" "You won't," she assured him. "Just speak from the heart. People will see your passion." She gave him a supportive smile, hoping it would diminish some of his fears. As the hour approached, the small workshop began to fill with faces from the community. Some familiar, others new. Jenna watched as Caleb greeted guests with a mixture of enthusiasm and nervousness. She felt a swell of pride as she observed him, fully immersed in this new role. A man transformed by the bonds they had forged. When it was time for the opening speech, Jenna stood close to the front, her heart racing alongside Caleb's. He took a deep breath, gripping the microphone. Hey everyone. Thank you for coming today," he began, his voice a little shaky but gaining strength. "I'm Caleb Morris, and I'm so grateful to see all of you here. This workshop is not just a place for tools and repairs. It's a space for community, for sharing, and for second chances." Jenna could see the way his confidence grew as he continued. I've been through a lot, and I know I'm not the only one who has felt lost or alone. My sister Jenna has been my rock through this journey. We've learned that family isn't just about blood, it's about connection and support. I want this place to be a refuge for anyone who needs it. As he spoke, Jenna felt a tear slip down her cheek. She was overwhelmed by the power of his words and the journey they had taken together. She could see the audience nodding, some wiping away their own tears, which made her heart swell even more. Today marks a new beginning for all of us, Caleb concluded, his eyes scanning the crowd. Let's build something beautiful together. He stepped back from the microphone, a mix of relief and exhilaration washing over him. The crowd erupted into applause and Jenna rushed forward to embrace him. You did it. That was amazing, she exclaimed, her voice filled with pride. Caleb chuckled, still catching his breath. I was so nervous, but hearing everyone respond like that, it felt incredible. As they shared this moment, Jenna noticed a figure lingering at the edge of the crowd. A man with an unfamiliar face stood silently, observing them with an intensity that made her uneasy. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, but she pushed it aside for the moment, focusing on the celebration surrounding them. The opening had been a success, and for the first time in a long while, Jenna felt an overwhelming sense of hope. She turned back to Caleb, who was beaming with pride. Look at what you've started. This is just the beginning, she said, taking his hand in hers. Yeah, and I couldn't have done it without you, he replied, his voice filled with sincerity. We're in this together, right? Always, Jenna affirmed, her heart full of promise. Little did they know, the day held further surprises, but for now, they were ready to embrace this new chapter in their lives. As sun began to set, casting a warm golden hue over the bustling crowd gathered for the inauguration of Caleb's community workshop, Jenna felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. She stood beside Caleb, who was nervously adjusting his tie, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Just as they were about to take a moment to relish their accomplishments, a stranger emerged from the crowd. He was tall and rugged, with a weathered face that told stories of years gone by. Jenna's instincts kicked in. Something about him felt off. Excuse me, the man said, his voice steady yet filled with urgency. Are you Caleb Morris and Jenna Sparks? Caleb nodded, stepping forward, while Jenna hung back, her heart racing. Yeah, that's us. Can we help you? The man took a deep breath, scanning the surroundings before leaning in closer. I have information about your biological parents. It's important, something you need to know. Jenna's heart sank. She exchanged a glance with Caleb, who seemed both intrigued and wary. What do you mean? How do you know us? He asked, his voice firm but laced with curiosity. I knew your parents, the man replied, his gaze shifting to the ground as if the weight of his words was too heavy to bear. I was there when they made the decision to separate you two. It was not what you think. Jenna felt her breath hitch in her throat. What do you mean? We've heard nothing but silence about them. The stranger looked at her, his eyes reflecting a deep sadness. It wasn't silence. It was protection. They were terrified for your lives. There were threats, dangerous people involved. Your parents had to make a choice to keep you safe, and separating you was the only way they thought they could do that. Caleb's brow furrowed as he processed the revelation. So, you're saying they didn't abandon us? They made a choice out of fear? Exactly, the man affirmed, nodding gravely. They loved you both so much, but they were in a situation that left them with no options. They never stopped thinking about you. Jenna's heart raced as the man continued. After the accident, they feared for your safety. They believed that by keeping you apart, they could shield you from the threats that loomed over your family. It was a heartbreaking decision, but it was made out of love. Caleb clenched his fists, the reality of the situation crashing down on him. Love? How could they choose to rip us apart if they loved us? They were desperate, the man replied, his voice softening. They thought they were doing the right thing, but they never wanted to lose you. They searched for you both for years, but were always one step behind. Jenna's mind raced. An ache settled in her chest as she thought about her parents, the family she had always known, and the secrets they carried. Would they have known? Would they have told her if they had? How do you know all of this? she asked, her voice trembling. I was close to them. I saw their pain, their regret. They lived with it every day, haunted by the choice they had to make. They wanted you to be safe, but they never wanted to let go of you, the man said, his tone filled with empathy. Caleb stepped forward, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Can you take us to them? We need to understand. The man hesitated before nodding. I can, but you should be prepared. The truth is not easy, and your parents have lived with their decision every single day. They want to explain, to apologize, but it's up to you to decide if you can accept them back into your lives. Jenna felt a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, confusion, and an unexpected glimmer of hope. She looked at Caleb, who seemed torn between wanting answers and fearing the pain that might come with them. Do you think we should? She asked softly. Caleb took a deep breath, determination flooding his eyes. We deserve to know the truth, Jenna. It's time to confront our past, to finally understand why we were separated. Jenna nodded, feeling the weight of his words. The stranger offered a reassuring smile, sensing the resolve in their decision. Let's go then. It's time you both learn the full story. As they began to walk towards the unknown, Jenna felt a mix of fear and anticipation, ready to uncover the threads of a past that had shaped their lives in ways they had yet to comprehend. Together, they stepped into a new chapter, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Jenna and Caleb sat across from each other at a small table in the corner of a cozy cafe, the air thick with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and baked pastries. The din of chatter and clinking cups faded into the background as they processed the shocking revelations from the stranger at the celebration. The weight of their family's past hung heavily between them, and a sense of urgency filled the space. I can't believe we're actually considering this, Jenna said, her voice barely above a whisper. She fidgeted with the hem of her sweater, her heart racing as she recalled the man's words. Our parents. They wanted to protect us. It changes everything. Caleb nodded, his brow furrowed in thought. It does, but it also means we need to find out more. We can't just sit back and accept it without digging deeper. What if there are more secrets? He leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly together. We owe it to ourselves to uncover the truth, Jenna. Jenna met his gaze, her eyes filled with determination. You're right. We can't let fear hold us back anymore. We've come this far together. We can't stop now. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. So what's our first step? Caleb pulled out his phone, tapping the screen as he searched for local archives and libraries. There's a historical society nearby. They might have records or information about our parents and the circumstances around our separation. We should start there. Good idea, Jenna replied, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and apprehension. I just hope they have something useful. She looked out the window, watching the raindrops race down the glass, mirroring the turmoil swirling inside her. As they finished their coffees, a plan began to form. They decided to visit the Historical Society that afternoon, both eager and anxious about what they might uncover. Jenna felt a rush of adrenaline. The thought of digging into her past, of finding answers, was invigorating. Yet, a part of her remained cautious, wary of what the truth might reveal. Later, at the Historical Society, the musty scent of old books and papers enveloped them as they stepped inside. Tall shelves lined with dusty tomes towered overhead, and the quiet atmosphere was punctuated by the occasional rustle of pages being turned. An elderly woman behind the counter looked up from her work, her glasses perched on the tip of her nose. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice warm yet curious. "We're looking for information about our biological parents," Caleb began, stepping forward. "We believe they might have been involved in a tragic event years ago that led to our separation." The woman's expression shifted, a flicker of recognition crossing her face. "Ah, I see. That's a delicate situation. If you're looking for records, I can guide you to the archives in the back. It may take some time, but we'll do our best to help." Jenna felt a mix of hope and dread as they followed the woman into the dimly lit archive room. Rows of boxes filled with documents awaited them, each one potentially holding pieces of their fragmented history. "Where do we even start?" she whispered to Caleb, her heart racing. "Let's try the family records first," he suggested, scanning the shelves. "If we can find anything about our parents or the incident that separated us, It might lead us to more answers. As they began to sift through the boxes, they uncovered faded photographs, newspaper clippings, and handwritten letters. Each item told a story, but many were incomplete, leaving them yearning for clarity. Hours passed, filled with silence and the occasional exchange of hushed comments. "Look at this," Caleb finally said, holding a yellowed newspaper article. "It's about a fire that occurred the year we were born. It mentions a family that lived nearby and how it changed their lives forever." Jenna leaned closer, her heart pounding. "Do you think it could be connected to us?" "Maybe. It could explain why they felt the need to separate us," Caleb replied, his eyes scanning the article. "We have to keep digging, Jenna. There has to be more." As they continued their search, Jenna felt an undeniable sense of connection growing between them. Each discovery brought them closer, and with every piece of information, their bond deepened. "We're in this together," she said, a newfound confidence in her voice. Caleb smiled, his expression filled with determination. "No matter what we find, we'll face it together. We're family now, and that means everything." With renewed purpose, they delved deeper into the archives, each moment of discovery forging a stronger connection between them. Jenna realized that despite the painful past, they were building something beautiful together. A future rooted in understanding, acceptance, and the unbreakable bond of family. As Jenna and Caleb delved deeper into their family's history, the news they uncovered felt like a tidal wave crashing over them. They were sitting at the small kitchen table in Jenna's apartment, surrounded by stacks of papers and old photographs, when Caleb glanced up from a newspaper clipping they had found. His voice was barely above a whisper, laced with disbelief. "Jenna, it says here that our biological parents might still be alive. They want to meet us." Jenna's heart raced as she processed the words. Alive? After all this time? She swallowed hard, her mind racing with emotions too complex to articulate. Why didn't they reach out before? Why now? Caleb leaned back in his chair, his expression a mixture of hope and fear. Maybe they've been waiting for the right moment, or maybe they thought we wouldn't want to see them. He paused, his brow furrowing. "But we have to find out, don't you think? This could change everything." Jenna stared at the table, her fingers tracing the edge of a faded photograph of the two of them as children, smiling and carefree. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," she admitted quietly. "What if they abandoned us out of choice, not necessity? What if they don't care?" Caleb reached across the table, grasping her hand firmly. "We won't know unless we go. And if we don't do this together, we'll always wonder." His earnest gaze pierced through her uncertainty, and she nodded slowly, the flicker of determination igniting within her. The day of the meeting arrived, and Jenna felt the weight of anxiety settle heavily on her chest. Caleb had insisted on driving, and as they made their way to the small cafe where they had agreed to meet their biological parents, Jenna could hardly speak. The city blurred past her, a cacophony of sounds that faded into the background. Her thoughts spiraled, a mix of anticipation and fear. Caleb parked the car, and they sat in silence for a moment. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "No," Jenna admitted, her heart pounding. "But we have to do this." They entered the cafe, the smell of coffee and fresh pastries wrapping around them like a warm blanket. A small table in the corner was occupied by two people who bore an uncanny resemblance to Jenna and Caleb. Their parents looked older, warier, but there was an unmistakable familiarity in their features. As they approached, Jenna's breath hitched in her throat. "Mom?" she managed to say, her voice trembling. Their mother looked up, tears brimming in her eyes. "Jenna? Caleb." She stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor as she rushed towards them. "I can't believe it's really you." Her arms enveloped Jenna in a tight embrace, and Jenna felt a flood of warmth, mingled with confusion and pain. Caleb stood frozen for a moment, then stepped forward, his expression a mixture of anger and longing. "You left us," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You separated us. How could you do that?" Their father, a man with kind eyes that mirrored Caleb's, stepped forward as well, his voice shaking. "We did it to protect you. I know it may not seem like it, but it was out of love. A tragedy forced us into a situation we never wanted to be in." Jenna pulled away from her mother, her heart racing. What kind of tragedy? What happened? Their mother took a shaky breath, glancing at her husband before continuing. There were threats against our family. We thought it was safer for you both to be apart. We didn't want you to grow up in fear. Caleb shook his head, anguish etched on his face. You could have told us. You could have given us a chance. I know, their father replied, his voice filled with regret. We were scared, and we made the worst decision possible. We're so sorry. In that moment, Jenna felt a rush of conflicting emotions, pain, anger, confusion, but beneath it all there was a flicker of understanding. You thought you were protecting us, she said softly, her voice wavering. That you didn't trust us to make our own choices. Her mother nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. We were wrong. I can't tell you how much we regret it. All we want is a chance to be part of your lives again. Caleb stepped closer to Jenna, his arm resting protectively around her shoulders. We need time, he said firmly. This is a lot to process. Jenna looked at her brother and then back at their parents. Maybe we can start with small steps, she suggested tentatively. Get to know each other again, one day at a time. Their mother nodded, hope flickering in her eyes. We'd do anything for that chance. As the conversation flowed, Jenna found herself feeling lighter, the weight of the past slowly lifting. With every word exchanged, they began to bridge the chasm that had separated them for so long. Finally, as the sun began to set outside the cafe, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange, Jenna felt a sense of peace wash over her. They were together now, and despite the scars of their past, there was a chance for healing. Family, Jenna whispered, glancing at Caleb. We really are family. Caleb squeezed her hand, a soft smile breaking through his earlier tension. Together, we'll figure this out. And in that moment, surrounded by their parents, Jenna and Caleb understood that love, though tested by time and circumstance, could indeed conquer all. This was their new beginning, a path towards understanding, forgiveness, and ultimately, a chance to redefine what family truly meant. Caleb squeezed her hand, a soft smile breaking through his earlier tension. Together, we'll figure this out. And in that moment, surrounded by their parents, Jenna and Caleb understood that love, though tested by time and circumstance, could indeed conquer all. This was their new beginning, a path towards understanding, forgiveness, and ultimately, a chance to redefine what family truly meant.